All right, so off the top here, when you think Black-owned business, what comes to mind?
For me, what comes to mind when I think of Black-owned businesses is the struggle and hard work and what it took to get here. I don't think people understand how hard it is to be an entrepreneur in general, but then to be a Black entrepreneur is even harder because there's a lot more obstacles and stereotypes and things that come with just being a minority in business in general that you have to overcome to get an even level playing field at times. So that's what I think of: hard work, dedication, motivation, drive, and those type of things.
Perfect. We'll get to the explanation of those things in a minute, but first I want to ask, what do you think other races and cultures, what do you think their perceptions are of Black-owned businesses, maybe the common misconceptions?
I think the common misconceptions that people have of Black-owned businesses is that we're unorganized, we're cheap, we're, for lack of a better word, ghetto, and that we are not professional. And it's really far from the truth. In order to get open, a lot of times you have to be even more on top of things than anybody else.
And I always hear, I've even heard in my own career, you got to be twice as good.
Yes.
When you're Black. What does that mean to you, and how do you combat that?
I totally agree with the fact that you have to be twice as good, and you have to be twice as knowledgeable. You have to be more prepared. It definitely is, as a woman in general, in a world of executives that are men, you already have to do that. But as a minority, it takes it even up a notch. And it's definitely a real statement. You have to be twice as organized, have to be twice as professional, twice as knowledgeable.
And you shouldn't have to be, right? But it's just the reality. What do you think Black-owned businesses do for our Black community, and minority-owned businesses do for the general?
I think it helps our whole community as a whole, as far as helping generational wealth in your family, and that it's something we can pass along. Knowledge is something we can pass along. Community support. It's huge for the community, and I think it's huge for all communities in order to also separate the economic gaps in your states and in your community as a whole. It just really bridges the gaps.
And I want to know maybe some numbers, if you have them, just throw them out at me. How many Black-owned dispensaries are in Las Vegas in comparison to your counterparts?
I'm one of the only Black women owners in the cannabis industry. I'm the only one in Nevada that has any equity in it, and as an operator as well with my partners. So in this industry in general, it's extremely hard to get in general as a whole, even in executive positions, management positions, and the whole nine. So it's very difficult for me to be here in general. I'm not supposed to be here, and I'm the only one.
And how does it make you feel that you're the only one? How do we change that?
It's very disheartening. I do a lot of advocacy work for this reason because it's only right. As we talked about what Black business ownership means to the community, this is what it means. It means bringing other people up with you, sharing the knowledge, trying to help the community as a whole and not just yourself. And so it's a very sad situation. A lot of regulations and laws need to be put in place to support Black ownership and Black entrepreneurship. And this industry and other industries I'm involved in as well, same thing. It's just, it's very disheartening, but it's a fight, it's a struggle, and we got to fight through it.
And let's talk about now those disparities you mentioned earlier and the obstacles and struggles that are different from your counterparts. Let's talk about the ones you've noticed and the ones that you've actually faced as a business owner.
When I go into meetings and things like that, I'm the only one that looks like me. Usually, I look out of place. I get treated out of place, like I'm not supposed to be there, or I'm supposed to be serving the drinks or something different, that I'm not in the capacity that I'm meant to be there for. So there's disparities in general when it comes to the perception of you even being the owner. When they step into a building, they're not the first person they think of when they think Black ownership, or ownership in general. They just don't think it. But I noticed those disparities in this industry, but as well as other business industries as a whole. So,
And what about entrepreneurship in Las Vegas? What's kind of give us a synopsis of what you think of the entrepreneurship here and why it's booming.
I grew up in Las Vegas. I've been here pretty much my whole life. I knew early on that this was the place I wanted to be after college for business. It's a fast-growing city. There's a lot of opportunity here. It is tough. It's very hard to get into a lot of industries. Sometimes you have that good old boy system, and then there's a lot of playing politics in different industries. But as a whole, there's a lot of opportunity here. You really have to hit the ground floor, though, with change in the industry you want to be involved in, or get really involved in legislation to make sure you get a fair shake when it comes to entrepreneurship. But I think Nevada could do a better job at supporting, but I do think we have people in office that are worried about it and are really trying to make change.
Awesome. And you mentioned you need to build a team. So talk about networking as a Black business owner and how you do that here in Las Vegas locally.
So in a lot of different industries, especially this industry here, it's definitely not something that usually is one person that can do it by themselves. It's a very, very complex business. So you do need a team of people, good team around you to support you. You need a good community base to come support you. We are very fortunate because the community, we do a lot of community advocacy work. We do a lot of community give back. I've done that prior to this business. I've always been involved in that. And I think that's why the community as a whole gives back as well to us. They support us, we support them. And I think that's what most businesses really need to embrace, is that it's not one-sided. It's not how can you make me money, how can I get more customers, it's how can we help each other, how can we help the community, how can you help me as a business owner. And I think if you really embrace that philosophy, it'll come. The business will come because people know your intentions. And so that's the support that we get here. We're very fortunate that way. The community is very supportive. They know how well and how much we work into the community as well. So I think it's very important.
Great answer. And is Las Vegas a new example of the Black Wall Street?
I don't think that Las Vegas is the example of Black Wall Street right now. I definitely think that we got a lot of people working hard to get a fair shake in a lot of different industries and get support by our state legislators. And I think that we're on the path to actually have that and build that type of community.
And let's talk about now the process and experiencing opening up Top Notch here.
Top Notch we were pioneers here. It was a historical situation for us to be involved in. So I'm very proud of that, but it definitely has been harder than any business I've been involved in. Compliance measures, all the different things you have to do to get into it, and as much money as it takes to be involved. And what people fail to realize is that being that it's not federally legal, it's also very expensive to operate, not just to run day to day, but even taxes and other things on the back end of the business is very, very expensive. So, the experience of doing it has been very challenging at times, but it's definitely worthwhile because we see what this does to help people. We know that we're innovative and we're the pioneers and we're leading the way for others. And that's why we go back and do the advocacy work and speak against social injustice issues that this industry was built around. So it's just, it's definitely a challenge. It has been extremely difficult, but it's definitely one that I would fight any day to have.
Can you expand a little bit on the social injustices within this industry that you mentioned? You don't have to tell the whole story, but just a little bit.
Yeah, this industry was built on the backs of minorities. It was something that we've been doing since the beginning of time, even back into slavery times when we were working the land. We've always been involved in different areas of different industries, and we really don't get the justice when it comes to being able to be involved in the industry when it finally materializes and monetizes for people to be a part of. The war on drugs incarcerates, minority people 4 to 10 times more than their counterparts, and that's how this industry basically built on the backs of those type of people. They're out there trying to make a living or being involved in trying to be involved in this type of industry, and unfortunately, having any type of cannabis, they might go to jail or whatever the case may be. So there's a lot of social injustice there. The war on drugs did a lot of damage to the Black and brown communities, and now it's legal in states, in different states. So it's, something we need to fix.
And let's talk about Top Notch now in particular. What sets you guys apart from, the other dispensaries or other health centers in town?
I think what sets us apart is some of the things I mentioned as far as give back to the community, how important the community is to us, and that's our grassroots. That's where we really came from, is just working with the people and knowing what they want and really being hands-on with the community. And so I think that sets us apart. We kind of consider ourselves the Cheers of the industry. If you remember that old show, you might be too young for that, but we know our customers' names. We know what they like. We're very personable. People come from all over to see us, and we're like a big family here. But yet we compete with some of the big giants in town, and we're able to do that because I feel like we're so connected to our base.
And did the pandemic hit you guys at all, or how did that affect you?
The pandemic definitely affected us. We lost personnel, we had to cut back, just like any other industry. The only difference is this was an essential business. So it was very hard for people to get their medication and things that help them with different physical elements or medical elements that they may be suffering. So it was very tough for us and for our customers as well. But things, since we were able to open, fully open. We still have a lot of restrictions and things because of COVID and the pandemic and things that are going on, but we're definitely ramming back up and looking good. It's definitely affected us though during that time.
And I just want to go back to, you mentioned that Top Notch, there's a historical, pioneering aspect to it. Can you expand on that a little bit just so I have the knowledge?
Yeah, I mean, it was, we're the first ones. It was like prohibition, just the same thing as when they legalized, alcohol, and suddenly you're the first person that can sell it legally in the state. And so we were the first ones licensed, along with a lot of the firsts. We were one of the first ones open, and that's history. And being the only minority African American woman in the industry here in Nevada, I was able to be a part of that history.
All right, and how should people treat and support Black-owned businesses, minority-owned businesses?
I don't think people should look at Black-owned businesses like they look at all businesses. I don't think that people should get a leg up just because they're a minority owner, in a sense. You still have to have quality products. You have to have good customer service. A lot of things you should have in place as a business owner in general. So I feel like people get a misunderstanding when we say support. It's not support no matter what. It's just support like you would support anybody else. And I feel like a lot of times people think, well, I gotta support a Black business because you're Black, and I'm saying support me because I'm just as good or better than anybody else. And don't use stereotypes when you're thinking about the type of business that I may run.
All right, do you have any encouraging words or words of wisdom for people out there who, might want to start a business and feel discouraged?
Right now, at this time, I think it's still important to learn as much as you can about the business you want to get involved in. You have to educate yourself more than your competitors. You have to be twice as motivated, like we said so earlier. You have to put in the work. You can't want to be a business owner just because you're good at something. You really have to do the research, do the work, put in long hours, and know that it's not going to end anytime soon. But in the long run, it's well worth it, and it's something you can pass down to your family, and it helps you grow as a person and better your situation as a whole.
Beautiful. And lastly, LaShawn, can you just briefly say, what she does, and that it's pretty special to have a Black female manager as well in this industry?
Yes, so we also have a Black female manager of the dispensary, and once again, in this industry, there's a very small percentage of women executives or management, and on top of that, women minority in management, and she's one of a very few in Nevada as well. She's been here since day one with us, working with us and growing the company, and she's moved up and worked her way through, and that's what should happen. If you work hard and you really put your best foot forward and you are talented, you should have the opportunity just like anybody else. You should be treated equally and make just as much money as any man out there, and she does it, and we recognize it, and that's what you need to do. We're very diverse in our staffing. We have everything you can think of, every culture you can think of, so we're very much into diversity, not just minorities. We want every race in here. We want this dispensary to represent people who actually purchase the product, and it's everybody. Okay, it's not one type of person, it's every type of person, and that's what our staff represents.